In the anime, Chikorita have had the most trainers among the Johto starter Pokemon. One Chikorita has been trained by each of Ash, Casey, Vincent, Silver, Lyra, and Horace. Bayleaf's necklace is consistently described as having a spicy aroma, while real Bayleafs have a bitter and herbal taste, which is similar to thyme. Meganium and its pre-evolved forms are the only evolutionary line of a starter Pokemon to keep their Japanese voices in the English dub of the anime, due to having nearly identical names in English and Japanese. Cyndaquil was the only Fire-type starter Pokemon to be pure Fire-type throughout all of its evolution, prior to the introduction of the Scorbunny line in Generation 8. Quilava, Typhlosion, and Entei are all capable of learning Eruption and share the same category, the Volcano Pokemon. In National Pokédex order, Typhlosion is the first Pokemon outside the original 151 whose National Pokédex number is a prime number. Totodile is the only Water-type starter Pokemon to have Scratch as a starting move. Croconaur's Mohawk was actually flattened in its Gold and Silver sprites. Feraligatr is the tallest of all Water-type starter Pokemon at 7 feet and 7 inches tall. It also reaches its final evolutionary form earlier than any other starter Pokemon at level 30. Despite its name implying it's based on a ferret, its behaviour is much more reminiscent of that of meerkats. Its appearance also seems to be based on the Tanuki and Sugar Gliders. Furret has little appearance in the anime, except for once in the Silver Conference, once in the Hoenn League, and a short appearance in the Sinnoh Saga where it was seen on a stretcher being carted off. In fighting Flyer with Fire, Falkner's Hoot Hoot stands on both legs, even though Hoot Hoot supposedly only ever stands on one leg at a time. Noctowl is the first Pokemon to appear as a shiny in the anime, and in Generation 9 is unable to learn Defog while Hoot Hoot can. Ledybur could not learn any Bug-type or Flying-type moves until Generation 3, therefore a Ledybur in Generation 2 could not receive Stab unless it possessed the appropriate hidden power. Despite multiple Pokédex entries describing its nocturnal behaviour, wild Ledian are almost always encountered exclusively during the morning or daytime. Spinarak can be seen as a parallel to Ledybur. Both of them are Bug-type Generation 2 Pokemon. Spinarak is exclusive to Pokemon Gold and Heart Gold, while Ledybur is exclusive to Silver and Soul Silver. Spinarak are nocturnal, while Ledybur are matutinal. Ariados is one of the few Pokemon whose sprites in both Gold and Silver are the same. Crobat's evolutionary family has several similarities with Swoobats. All of the members of both lines are based on bats and reach their respective final evolved form by friendship. And Crobat can be seen as a parallel to Noivern, both are flying-type Pokemon based on bats that have Infiltrator as a possible ability, and they have the same base stat total and the same base HP, defense, and special defense stats. Although Chinchou is shown to have the ability to walk on land in the anime, in the games it can only be caught in water and it lacks a footprint. In Pokemon Emerald, a trainer in Victory Road has a Lantern that knows Earthquake, despite Lantern not being able to learn that. Pichu has the lowest base stat total of all Electric-type Pokemon. And Pichu is the only Generation 2 Pokemon to be playable in the Super Smash Bros. Series, though many others appear from Pokeballs. Cleffa is tied with Pawmi and Greavard for having the shortest Japanese name of all Pokemon, being spelt with only 2 kana. And Cleffa, Igglybuff, and Togepi are the only baby Pokemon to have a Tag Team GX card. Igglybuff has the lowest base defense stat of all Fairy-type Pokemon, and is tied with Cleffa and Morlul for the lowest base speed stat of all Fairy-type Pokemon. All of Togepi's anime Pokédex entries during Season 1 refer to it as an Egg Pokemon. This is due to its real category, Spike Ball Pokemon, not being known at the time. Togetic and Typhlosion are the only Pokemon officially introduced in Generation 2 not to appear in the anime until the next generation. Natu shares its category with Pidgey, Spearow, and Rookidee. They are all known as the tiny bird Pokemon, though Natu was known as the little bird Pokemon in Generation 2. Jeff Callis, who assisted in the naming of many Generation 2 Pokemon, suggested the English name for Xatu. The name arose from Nintendo and the Pokemon Company's desire to have a Pokemon for every letter of the alphabet. Mareep's yellowish wool might be inspired by the Golden Fleece in Greek and Roman mythology. In all 3 times that Flaffy is mentioned as an answer in a Pokemon Trainer's Choice segment, its name is misspelled as Flaffy with 2 A's instead of 2 A's and 2 F's. An early design for Ampharos depicted it with a shorter neck. Despite its apparent connection to hula, a form of dance that originated in Hawaii, Blossom is not native to the Alola region and must be transferred in from other regions. Because Azuril's gender ratio does not match that of its evolved forms and its evolution is not dependent on gender, being female 75% of the time while Marill and Azumarill are female only 50% of the time, female Azurill have a 1 in 3 chance of evolving into a male Marill prior to Generation 6. Whether or not this will happen is determined by its personality value. Azurill is the only Pokemon to do this. In Generation 5, Azumarill and Marill are the only Pokemon that can have the electric type as their sole weakness. This is because of their hidden ability Sap Sipper. In Generation 2, only one Sudowoodo appears, from being sprayed with water from a squirt bottle. Similarly, in Generation 3, only one Sudowoodo appears, this time as the result of a spray from the Whalmer Pail. However, in Generation 4, the player can get multiple wild Sudowoodo by evolving Bonsly or by catching it in tall grass. Prior to Generation 6, Politoed and its evolutionary counterpart Poliwrath shared the same base stats. This changed in Generation 6 when Poliwrath received a 10-point increase to its attack, but Politoed did not receive a stat increase. An early design of Hoppip had no arms and legs and was dark coloured, resembling a black cat. Skiploom's Korean name very roughly translates to little head thing. At 6.6 pounds, 3 kg, Jumpluff is the lightest Pokemon that has undergone 2 evolutions. It uses a gadget based on Apom's tail, called the Apom Arm, and Apom's Chinese names roughly translate to strange long tail hand. Sunkern and its evolved form are the only Pokemon to have Early Bird as its hidden ability. And since Pokemon Black 2 and White 2, Sunkern has the lowest base experience yield of all Pokemon. Sunflora is Meowth's most commonly used Pokemon disguise in the anime, having been used 7 times so far. In Pokemon Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, despite being able to learn Leech Life through breeding, Yanma cannot learn it via TM28. Its evolved form can, however. Wooper is the only ground-type Pokemon to consist only of a head and legs, and Wooper was one of the first Pokemon to have its gender differences revealed, along with Scizor. All of Quagsire's names include some sort of higher title in them. King, Lord, Majesty and Sire are the most common. Espeon has blue inner ears in the games, but in the anime they are often purple. And Espeon is the only evolution without a type advantage over another. Several of Umbreon's Pokédex entries refer to Poisonous Sweat, which may be a holdover from the 1997 Nintendo Space World demo of Gold and Silver, where it was a poison-type Pokémon. And Umbreon is the only evolution to be immune to another evolution's type, in this case Espeon. Murkrow is the only Pokemon that evolves with a Duskstone that is not a Ghost type. And in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Murkrow is programmed to be able to learn punishment through breeding, but no other Pokemon in the flying group can pass down punishment as an egg move in those games. Vullaby and Mandibuzz are the only flying egg group Pokemon that can learn punishment, but they can't pass down the move due to being a female-only species. Slowking, its Galarian form, and their evolutionary relatives are the only Psychic-type Pokemon in the Monster Egg group, and Jotonian Slowking shares its category with Pyroar. They are both known as the Royal Pokemon. Misdreavus was the first pure Ghost-type Pokemon to be introduced, as well as the only one in Generation 2. And Misdreavus's base HP, attack, and defense stats are the same as Mismagius's, but its base special attack, special defense, and speed stats are lower. After Pikachu, Unown is currently represented in the trading card game by the second highest number of cards of all Pokemon, with 92 unique cards. Due to Unown's letter and shininess both being determined by IVs in Generation 2, Shiny Unown will always be either an I or a V in these games. This in turn matches the acronyms for IVs, however, this is only a coincidence as individual values, IVs, is a fan-originated term. Unown is the only Pokemon that cannot learn any status moves, and Unown is the only Generation 2 Pokemon that has not been featured in a Rangers series game. In Generation 3, if 2 Wobbuffet with leftovers are facing each other in a single battle, the battle will become endless as all of Wobbuffet's moves do not directly damage the opponent, and the player cannot switch to their other Pokemon due to Shadow Tag. Even if the Wobbuffet uses Struggle, the damage will be healed quickly by leftovers. Shadow Tag and Struggle were both changed in Generation 4, likely as a direct response to this scenario. Girafarig's name is a palindrome. Keeping with the theme, its low HP quote in Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon is also a palindrome, and also an early design of Girafarig had a full-sized second head, reflecting its palindromic name, and resembling a Push Me Pull You. Additionally, it was intended to be Dark Normal type and to have a pre-evolution named Swinub, which literally means twins. Pineco's inspiration for its design comes from many places: pine cones, bagworms, Mexican jumping beans, caltrops, and grenades. Forretress is the first original Steel-type Pokemon in the National Pokédex, as Magnemite and its evolution were not Steel types in Generation 1. In the anime, Dunsparce is usually shown to be much shorter than 4'11", 1.5 meters, which is its listed height, or in this case length, in the games. It is also shown as much smaller than its listed height in Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Gates to Infinity and Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon, being even smaller than Pikachu. Gligar can be seen as a counterpart to Sneasel. Both of them have two types, which cause them to have a 4 times weakness to another type. They have the same base stat total. They both evolve into a Pokemon that was introduced in Generation 4, Gliscor and Weavile, and they do so by leveling up at night while holding an evolution item whose name includes the word Razor, Razor Fang, and Razor Claw. All Steelix in the anime have used the move Iron Tail, excluding cameos, and Steelix is the only Pokemon in the Pokemon Ranger games that can hurt the capture styler simply by touching the line. The route that Snubbull swarms in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum is also its National Pokédex number 209. As the ability Quick Feet did not exist until Generation 4, a Snubbull with either Intimidate or Runaway will always evolve into a Gramble with Intimidate in Generation 3 games. This means that in Generation 3, Gramble is the only Pokemon with an ability that evolves from a Pokemon with one of 2 possible abilities that shares to Gramble's ability. The Pokemon Gold and Silver Space World 97 demo has an early design of Quillfish named Buku, whose name may be a corruption of Fugu, pufferfish. It was a pure water type and would evolve into Shibirafugu at level 18. Despite having different base stats, Scizor, Kleavor, and Scyther all have a base stat total of 500. Scyther has a higher base speed, whereas Scizor and Kleavor have a higher base attack and defense respectively. As such, Scizor and Kleavor are the only Pokemon to not have their base stat total changed upon evolving. Shuckle's stats have the greatest standard deviation of all Pokemon, with 103.21. Meaning they are the most uneven out of all Pokemon. Due to this extreme distribution, it is either the best or in the bottom 4 of every base stat, and in Generation 2, the first Shuckle holding a berry in the player's party has a 1 in 16 chance to turn it into a berry juice after each battle. Heracross is the only fighting type Pokemon in the Bug Egg group, and Mega Heracross has the highest base attack stat of all Bug type Pokemon. Also, Mega Heracross is tied with Mega Pinsir, Mega Scizor, and Genesect for the highest base stat total of all Bug-type Pokemon. Hisuian Sneasel and its evolution were designed by Hitoshi Uriga, who also made Pangoro, Honedge, Doublade, Aegislash, Inkay, Malamar, Tyrunt, Hyrantrum, Amora, Aurorus, Mega Beedrill, Alolan Geodude, Alolan Graveler, Alolan Golem, Alolan Grimer, Alolan Mutt, Grubbin, Charjabug, Vikavolt, Minior, all of its forms, Drampar, Necrozma, its Draft, Ultra Necrozma, Yhelp, Rookidee, Corvisquire, Corviknight, Dracozolt, Arctozolt, Dracovish, Arctovish, Knackley and its shiny, Knacklestack and its shiny, Garganacl and its shiny, Espathra and its shiny, Fluttermane and all 4 goddamn Ogerpon forms. Despite its fondness for honey in its Pokédex entries and even dropping Dazzling Honey is not among the list of Teddy Ursa's preferred foods in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Ursaring's number of claws has changed over time and between canons. In its original artwork, Ursaring has 4 visible claws. However, in the anime and in its Heart Gold and Soul Silver artwork, it has 5 claws. In the Generation 2 games, it has 3 claws. From Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire up to and including Platinum, it has 4 claws. From Heart Gold and Soul Silver onwards, Ursaring has had 5 claws in its game sprites. In the anime and all 3D titles prior to Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it has always had 5 claws. Despite being a Generation 2 Pokemon, Slugma was actually native to Kanto in Pokemon Gold, Silver and Crystal, and Slugma has the lowest base stat total of all Fire-type Pokemon. Magcargo is the only Pokemon to be obtainable in every main Generation 3 game, if Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness are to be included. It was also included in every Generation 2 and every Generation 4 game, making Pokemon Black and White the first main game since its introduction where it cannot be obtained. No other Pokemon has the same type combination as Swinub and its evolutions, and Swinub's type combination is also the only combination weak to all 3 first partner Pokemon types, Grass, Water, and Fire. According to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Piloswine was designed by Shigeki Morimoto, who wanted to complete the Chinese zodiac by making Pokemon from all 12 zodiac animals. Corsola can be seen as a parallel to Farfetch'd in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Both of their original region's forms do not evolve, and they have monotyped regional forms which can evolve once. At the Stow-on-Side Stadium and during the Champion Cup finals, Alistair in Pokemon Shield uses Galarian Corsola's evolution, Cursula, in his team, while Bea in Pokemon Sword uses Galarian Farfetched's evolution, Sirfetch'd, in her team. If you were to rearrange the Gold and Silver Pokérap so all the Pokemon are in National Pokédex order, Espeon and Remoraid would remain in their respective positions in the song. And in the Pokemon Gold and Silver Space World 97 demo, Remoraid's design more clearly resembled a revolver. The company logo for the Galar Fire Station depicts an Octillery, and in the Pokemon Gold and Silver Space World 97 demo, Octillery's design included a helmet and armor that make it resemble a tank. Delibird is one of the few Pokemon who can learn TM moves when it learns fewer than 4 moves by leveling up, and Delibird has Insomnia as its hidden ability, although it already has access to Vital Spirit, another ability which has exactly the same in-battle effect. Despite the fact that Mantine evolves from Mantike in the presence of a Remoraid, Remoraid has not been present in any of Mantine's sprites in the core series games since Generation 4, in which this evolution method was introduced. A Skarmory is featured in Cyndaquil's Blueberry Pokédex image battling a Cyndaquil. This references the episode Hot Matches, which featured a trainer Skarmory battling Ash's Cyndaquil. And Skarmory has the highest base defense stat of all flying type Pokemon. The only 5 games so far in which Houndour can be captured by the player before viewing the end credits are Pokemon XD, Pokemon Platinum, Pokemon X, and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And Houndour has the lowest base defense stat of all fire type Pokemon. Houndoom is the only non-legendary or mythical Pokemon in the mainline games to have a unique battle track associated with it and that is shared with no other encounter. Kingdra's name is often mistranslated to Kingora in the Xuangyi translation of Pokemon Adventures. Kingdra is the only Dragon-type Pokemon introduced in Generation 2, and finally, Kingdra and its pre-evolved forms share the category with Dratini, its evolved forms, Salamence, and Colosian Gudra. They are all known simply as the Dragon Pokemon. Phanpy's bright colouring and small stature may be a reference to children's toys, and the red parts of its designs may reference the fabrics and jewellery used to adorn elephants during various celebrations in India. Donphan shares its category with Tyranitar. They are both known as the Armour Pokemon, and Donphan, Volcarona and Cyclizar are the only Pokemon to have both a past and future Paradox counterpart. Porygon 2 is the only Pokemon with a number in its name, and Porygon 2 is the only member of its evolutionary family that has not received an anime voice, as Porygon's voice was heard in episode 38 and the Who's That Pokemon segment for A Way Off, Day Off, and Porygon Z was given an anime voice for its appearance in Pokepark Wii Pikachu's Adventure. Stantler's Japanese name, Odoshishi, comes from the Japanese Shishi Odoshi, which means deer/boar frightening, and refers to devices in Japanese gardens that are intended to scare away wildlife that pose a threat to said gardens. The most prominent Shishi Odoshi would be the Sozu, which is that little bamboo arm that's filled with water, and when it's full, it tips over and hits a rock. This sound is supposed to scare away animals. Why this is Stantler's Japanese name? I have no idea. Because it's only ever capable of learning Sketch by level up, and being unable to learn any TM or HM move, Smeargle has both the smallest and the largest move pool out of any Pokemon. And Smeargle is the only Pokemon capable of learning the same move by leveling up more than 4 times. Some Pokemon have the same move available at level 1 as well as by leveling up, while Smeargle has Sketch available 10 times as it levels up. Tyrogue has several unique attributes. It's the only Pokemon whose evolution is determined by stats, it's the only baby Pokemon whose stats are all equal, and it's the only Pokemon that created a shared evolution family between 2 Pokemon that were previously unrelated. Hitmontop can learn the most priority moves of all Pokemon, with 14 increased priority moves and 2 decreased priority moves, and unlike Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, none of Hitmontop's names in any language derive from famous people. In Pokemon Gold and Silver, Smoochum is programmed to be able to learn Lovely Kiss through breeding, but no male Pokemon in the human-like group can legitimately learn it to pass it down as an egg move in those games. In Generation 6, Jinx would have been able to pass down the move due to changes in breeding mechanics, allowing mothers to pass down egg moves. Much like most other baby Pokemon in Generation 2, the only way to get an Elekid is via the odd egg you get on Route 34. If you don't get it in the egg, you have to breed an Electabuzz, as it isn't found anywhere in the wild in Kanto or Johto. Magby's Japanese name is Booby, spelt B-U-B-Y. This is a combination of the word baby and also booby, spelt B-O-O-B-Y. And Magby has the lowest possible maximum performance in any given stat of any Pokemon in the Pokéathlon, only capable of reaching 3 stars in any of its 5 stats. Miltank can be seen as a counterpart to Tauros, both are bovine-like Pokemon with the same base stat total. While Miltank is a female-only species, Tauros is a male-only species. Despite not being associated with a certain group, both Miltank and Tauros are listed in the same Pokédex page in Pokemon Sun and Moon and Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. The same trait is true with Oranguru and Persimmon. Blissey has the highest base HP and special defense stats of all normal type Pokemon, and is tied with Eternamax Eternatus for the highest base HP stat of all Pokemon. A level 100 Dynamaxed Blissey with 31 IVs in HP, 252 EVs in HP, and a Dynamax level of 10 has the highest HP of all Pokemon at 1,428 HP. With a base experience yield of 608, Blissey has the largest experience yield of any Pokemon. And finally, Blissey is the only Pokemon whose base experience yield is greater than its base stat total. Raikou is the only Pokemon in the anime whose image on the Pokédex was of stylized art rather than the series' creator-designer. Raikou's effort value yield of 1 special attack and 2 speed is unique, and Raikou's numbers in the National Pokédex and the Johto Pokédex are identical, 0243 and 243 respectively. Entei has the highest base HP stat of all Fire-type Pokemon. An unused event present in the data of Pokemon Gold and Silver, but removed from Crystal, allows for the player to obtain a level 40 Entei. In Gold, Silver and Crystal, playing Entei's cry in the Pokédex then switching to Suicune or Raikou before the cry ends causes a distortion in the cries of Suicune or Raikou. Suicune is the only member of a legendary trio to also be a game mascot while its fellow members are not. And before you comment about Zygarde or Eternatus, they actually have the opposite problem. And Suicune is the only Shadow Pokemon that can have a varying moveset, normally knowing Surf if snagged in the Under or Rail Gym Tower. Suicune instead knows Hydro Pump if it is snagged in Deep Colosseum. Larvitar appears to share similarities with dinosaurs and kaiju. Its penchant for eating mountains, fences, or probably anything else may also come from the legend of the Tarrasque. Pupitar's French name, Infect, is a combination of nymph, disgusting, and insect, meaning it's roughly called Disgusting Nymph Insect, whatever that means. No other Pokemon has the same type combination as Tyranitar, and Tyranitar's design heavily resembles a monster design illustrated by Ken Sugimori for volume 14 of Microdesign Publishing's bi-monthly game review magazine, published on April 1997. According to Sugimori, the monster design was meant to be an original creation, unrelated to Pokemon. Shigeki Morimoto said in an interview for the Nintendo Dream November 2009 issue that Lugia was made a Psychic type instead of a Water type because they wanted to give it a stronger impression. Despite not being a Water type, Lugia has occasionally been depicted as a Water type in the trading card game, and Lugia's Generation 4, 5, and 6 Pokédex entries that mention it being able to cause a 40-day storm may be a biblical reference to Noah's Ark. Ho-Oh was first revealed in the August 1996 issue of CoroCoro, along with Pokemon Gold and Silver, thus making it the first sign that the Pokemon franchise would ever expand beyond 151 Pokemon. And in the Pokemon Gold and Silver Space World 97 demo, Ho-Oh was a pure flying type legendary Pokemon. Also, Ho-Oh's name is a palindrome. After Deoxys, Celebi is the second mythical Pokemon to become legitimately available in-game without any sort of event or distribution, this time in the Virtual Console release of Pokemon Crystal on the 3DS. And a 2008 interview done with Matsumitsu Hidaka revealed that the GS Ball was initially meant to contain a Celebi that would be used in a story arc throughout the Johto series. This idea was shelved, however, when Celebi was decided to be the star of Celebi, the Voice of the Forest.